If you run a Shopify store, the advice never stops. Run more ads, fix your email, improve your product pages, add subscriptions, optimize your checkout. It's endless. And the annoying part is a lot of that advice, it's not wrong. It's just wrong for the phase that your store is actually in. And that's the part that most founders miss. The phase that you're in determines the problem that you should be solving. So in this video, I want to walk you through the 4 early phases of Shopify growth and the one job that matters in each. Now, most Shopify growth advice fails because it ignores context. A store doing 20K a month doesn't have the same problem as a store doing 200,000 a month. A founder still trying to prove demand doesn't need the same playbook as a brand ready to scale ads. Same advice, different phase, wrong outcome. That's why this framework matters. Good advice can still waste your time. Better email flows might help, more ads might help. Subscriptions, bundles, landing pages, reviews, UGC, you name it. It's all potentially useful, but it's not all useful right now. If you pull the right lever at the wrong time, it's still not going to move the needle. This is why founders feel stuck even when they're doing a lot. They're not lazy, they're not ignoring the business, and usually the fact is they're doing too much. They're new campaigns, new apps, new offers, new pages, new strategy calls, but none of it compounds because they just haven't identified the real constraint. That's the job here. Find the context, then fix that. So there are 4 early phases of Shopify growth: learning, growing, plateau, and scale. Each phase has one main problem, and if you solve the wrong problem, you can lose an entire year just kind of being busy. So let's make this simple. Phase 1 is learning. At this stage, you don't really fully know who buys, why they buy, or where they're coming from. So the job isn't optimization, it's discovery. You're trying to learn who's the real customer, what message is going to get their attention, what offer is going to make them act, what traffic source produces buyers. So if you're still answering those questions, don't obsess over advanced CRO. You need signal first, you need data. So the job in phase 1 is to find the fit between the product and the customer, fit between the message and the pain, fit between the offer and the market. And this isn't the time to be trying to build a perfect machine. This is the time to test fast and read the signal, gather data, because once you know what sells, who buys it, and where they come from, then we can move on to phase 2. You know that you're ready for phase 2 when 3 things are all true. You can name your customer clearly, you know which traffic source produces buyers, not just clicks, and your offer is easy to understand. If those 3 things click into place, now you have momentum, and that's phase 2. Phase 2 is growth. Revenue starts climbing, the orders are picking up, things feel like they're working, right? This phase, it's exciting, but it's also where founders make a quiet mistake. They confuse momentum with a system. Those are not the same thing. Growth can hide a lot of a mess. Phase 2 is where clutter really starts to build. You add review apps, you add pop-ups, bundles, landing pages, quizzes, email flows, more integrations, right? And none of those decisions are automatically wrong, but together they add weight. The site gets noisier, the offer gets a little less clear, and the customer, they have a lot more to process. And the founder, you have a lot more to manage. That clutter usually becomes the phase 3 problem. For a while, growth makes the business feel healthy. But sometimes the growth is really just covering up friction. The founder is still holding everything together. The store is still leaking conversions, and the customer journey, it's still just too messy. Then the growth starts to slow down. And suddenly, that mess starts to get really, really expensive. And that's phase 3. Phase 3 is the plateau. This is where a lot of established Shopify stores get stuck. You have revenue, you have customers, you have traffic. But the numbers just aren't moving. The conversion rate's stuck, your CAC feels heavier, scaling feels risky, right? And the answer, it's just not obvious anymore. That's the painful part. The business, it's not broken, it's unclear, right? So phase 3, it feels like pushing harder and just getting the same numbers, right? You have too many levers in front of you. Ads, email, product pages, offers, bundles, landing pages, site speed, check. There's so many different levers that you have. It's overwhelming, and everyone has a different opinion. Everyone thinks that they know what the answer is, so the founder becomes the bottleneck. Not because they're bad at business, but because there's too many possible problems and no clear order of operations. The trap in phase three is actually doing more. More apps, more traffic, more campaigns, more hiring, more pages. But phase three, it actually usually doesn't need more. What it needs is clarity. Where's the revenue leaking? What's creating the friction? What should be fixed first and what can wait? Right? This is where you stop adding and you start diagnosing. And then finally, we're on phase four. This is where you actually pour fuel onto the working fire. You know your numbers, you know what converts, you know you know that the buying journey actually works, and you know what happens when you turn up the ad spend. Now, more traffic can actually make sense. Bigger budgets can make sense, but this all only works if the machine underneath is clean. The expensive mistake is trying to skip to phase four directly from phase two. You get some momentum, you assume the machine is ready, so you just crank up your ad spend. But if the store is unclear, more traffic doesn't solve it, it just amplifies it. You don't scale profit, you scale the leak. That is why clarity has to come before the scale. So here's the map. Phase one, learning. You find your fit. Phase two is growth. That's where you protect momentum. Phase three is the plateau. That's where you really get clarity. You fix the leak and you solidify your system. And then phase four is scale. That's where you pour the fuel on what's already working. The mistake is treating every store like it needs the exact same next move. It does not. The phase determines the job. So if you want to know where you are, ask yourself these 4 questions and be brutally honest. Do you know what sells, or are you still testing? Are your numbers climbing, or have they leveled off? Do you feel clear on what your next move is, or are you still buried in options? And finally, can the business run without you, or are you still having to hold it all together? And again, be honest. The goal isn't to sound more mature than you are. The goal is to solve the right problem. Here's the thesis. Here's the overarching theme for all of this. You can't outspend clarity. Again, I'll say it louder for anyone in the back. You can't outspend clarity. If your store is leaking more traffic, the traffic just buys more leakage. If the journey's unclear, more tools create more clutter. Growth gets easier when you solve the right problem for the right phase that you're actually in. So before you ask, what should I add? Ask, what phase am I in? Because if you're in phase one, learn faster. If you're in phase two, protect your momentum. If you're in phase three, stop adding and find the leak. And if you're in phase four, scale the machine. But don't confuse those jobs. That's how you waste a year. So if this was useful, subscribe. I break down real Shopify growth problems every week. And I also go through and do live Shopify audits every week. No fluff, no hacks, just what actually moves the business.